The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, we have a guest with an incredible story. A story about overcoming adversity. She is a mother of two children, Christopher, 18, and Carolyn, 13. She's a certified professional trainer through National Academy of Sports Medicine. She is a sports nutritionist, also through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. She is a certified cycle and Zumba instructor. Some of her accomplishments, there's so many, here's just a few. In 2013, she took second place in a 45 plus bikini competition. In 2014, she took first place in a 50 plus bikini contest. And just this month of July, she took third place in a 45 plus bikini competition. And then, get this, she traveled quickly over to another state and decided to compete in her first ever national bodybuilding show and took 7th place in that show, a national contest. And she is 55 years old. Welcome. And thank you, Lynda, so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast.
Thank you, Tammy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm honored to have you. So let's get started so we can help people understand your story a little bit. I want to get to talking about a little bit about your background, where you came from. So tell us a little bit about where you were born.
Okay. Yep. I was born Lynda Puglisi, Italian, grew up in an Italian-American family, big family in New Jersey.
Nice.
And I have two sisters and real big family. Mom and dad are both Italian. And I was diagnosed with lupus at 19 years old and suffered with lupus for many, many years into my 40s. And the beauty about today is the month of July 2019, a long story attached to it, but it marks 10 years that I haven't had a single symptom of lupus or been on a single drug for lupus. And I was a very sick woman.
That is fantastic. And I'm so excited for everyone to hear your story today. And that's why you're here on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, so that we can share your story with everybody and touch some lives out there. So how did you get to Colorado?
I got to Colorado. I followed a boy out here. And, yeah. Back when I was very, very young. And I think on some level, I was already diagnosed with lupus. I think on an unconscious level, I didn't want to burden my family. Doctors had told us I would be in a wheelchair by the time I was 30. And I think on an unconscious level, he was a great guy, seemed to like me. I didn't think anybody was going to really want to like somebody, that was so sick.
Right.
And, I think that's why I came here. I didn't want to burden anybody. In the end, it ended up being the best decision I ever made. I wouldn't be the woman today if I didn't move to Colorado in my 20s.
Isn't that amazing how that happens? We have no idea what the decisions we're making or why, but then it just turns out. I just love that. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, let's get down to your story, because I'm really anxious to share it. It is such an incredible story, and I don't know all of it yet, and I just can't wait to hear more about all of it. So you mentioned that you were diagnosed with lupus when you were 19, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What was it? How did that happen? you went to the doctor because you had a symptom you needed to get checked, or what made you go?
Sorry.
That's
I got a rash across my face, which I now know is called a malar rash. That
okay.
rash resembles a wolf type rash, and lupus in Latin means wolf.
Oh, that's
I was
interesting.
a sun worshiper at a young age, so I thought it was because of the sun. Go into this doctor, and she said, you have discoid lupus.
Okay.
Never heard of it. The name lupus just sounded completely repulsive to a young girl in her 20s.
Right.
And told me that there's another form of lupus called lupus erythematosus, which affects the internal organs in your body. And she wanted to test me to see if I had that. I was like, sure, because I wasn't really taking any of this in anyway. And it did come back, yes, you have that. And I proceeded to leave her office and go to the library and read all about this lupus erythematosus. And it included joint problems and brain problems and fluid around your heart and your lungs and kidney disease. And I was mortified.
Right.
I didn't take it in because I was like, I don't feel that way. This is insane. And I just went on with my life.
Right. So all you had at this time was a rash. That was it. You didn't have any other symptoms.
And that rash is exasperated by sun. So I stayed out of the sun. It got a little bit better and I was good. But I worked in New York City at the time at the South Street Seaport Fitness Center. And slowly over the next year, all these symptoms started, a lot of them at least, the joint pain specifically, to the point that I couldn't do that job anymore. So I had to go back to the doctor and investigate more.
Okay. So what was it at that time that made you not believe the doctor or made you reject, if you will, that diagnosis? What was that?
I think I didn't receive it. And the only thing I can compare it to is, somebody gives you a gift and it's a sweater and it's a lovely sweater, but you just know it's not your style. It's not for you. When she's saying all this, the reason why it wasn't coming in wasn't because I was afraid of the disease. It was just like, because it's not true. That's all I could feel is it. I'm not a sick person. I don't feel like a sick person. And I just didn't let it in. I didn't receive it.
Okay. So then a year later, you started having some symptoms. Tell me about those symptoms. What was that like?
So a lot of it in the beginning. And I remember it so vividly. I was living in New Jersey and commuting into the city to work. The fatigue was incredible. All of a sudden, every morning, it would just be like you'd get a good night's sleep. Feel like you have a hangover. And I'd get out of bed, I'd drink a bunch of cups of coffee, try to figure out what's wrong, what's changing. And the joint pain started to set in. And all I could tell you is you would think it couldn't get any worse, the fatigue. And the next week it would be worse. And the next week it would be worse. And you're starting to think you're crazy because there's nothing wrong with you. And I couldn't understand it. And to the point that I couldn't keep that job anymore. I was transferred to another job that was locally in the same company because I physically couldn't do the commute anymore.
Wow. That must have been life-changing for you at that point to lose a job because of the symptoms you were having. And have to change a job.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so at this point now, I'm just trying to get by, go back to the doctors. It's confirmed now that I have this. And I just wanted to feel better. I still don't think I was accepting that I had this, but anything to make me feel better. And that's when the medications started. And they introduced me to prednisone, which is a very difficult drug. A lot of other symptoms started. I mean, it started a cycle in my 20s all the way through. I was in and out of hospitals with fluid around my heart, fluid around my lungs, hair loss, fatigue to the point that I couldn't hold my eyes open.
Wow.
In really bad shape. So my parents took me to a Lupus Foundation meeting where they basically told me that I'd probably be in a wheelchair by the time I was 30. And my mom just reminded me of that meeting. She said, remember, you ran out and said, don't you ever take me to anything like that again. I will never be like those people. And I put them back again. Yeah.
Wow. So how long was that period? So that was about 22 when those additional symptoms started,
Mhm.
and you changed your job and you were starting medications. And how long did that go on?
Oh, it went on into my 40s. I
Into
mean,
your 40s.
yeah, I mean, even moving to Colorado, I was such a sick woman
Mhm.
for many, many years, many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long haul
Oh,
of
it's a
feeling
very,
bad. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So, after you got to Colorado, were you working at that time? You were
Yeah.
working full time through
Yes.
these symptoms.
I found an old journal this week, which is just amazing because I have everything documented that I went through. I'm crying as I'm reading this journal this morning.
I bet.
Yeah, I found parts of the journal where I said, I know because I was initially on disability when I got here.
Right.
I didn't want to stay on disability because for me, that mind body connection, me being disabled and not working, and then that means I can't go to the gym. And I wanted to change the way I viewed my day. And
Right.
immediately when I got here, I went out and got a job. I was an executive assistant. I did secretarial work for
Uh-huh.
senior level managers.
Okay.
The unfortunate part was they realized real quick how sick I was. So I went through a lot
Yeah.
of jobs. I was real good at getting jobs. It was keeping
Right.
it was hard because I was such a sick woman.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah,
So you went through this time period where you're just kind of dealing with it. Did you have any surgeries at this point?
not at this point. No, the
Okay.
surgeries didn't come till later because the surgeries are more associated with the drugs that the doctors gave me. And I could talk about that as
Okay. Okay. So when was it that you felt a shift in the way you were living your life? I know you were fighting through things. You were still going to work. You were still kind of not receiving the diagnosis as yours,
well.
but something happened where you decided, I've got to make a change.
Well,
What was that point?
after 9 surgeries in 8 years, all due to taking prednisone, caused a condition
Okay.
called osteonecrosis, where
Okay.
my shoulder joints crumbled, my hip bones, and my knees. I had a lot of surgeries. And
Okay.
I was at that point still such a sick woman. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and Tony Robbins talks one of my favorite quotes. It's probably my life quote. Goes something like, "When the suffering gets more painful than changing, that's when you change." And at that point in my life, I knew, and it was a spiritual thing too. I felt God, I heard God's voice say to me, "It's time." And I knew at that point that the medical profession was failing me. You couldn't keep track of what was a symptom from a drug, what was an actual symptom from the disease. You couldn't tell what was a side effect and what wasn't. And
Right.
I'm not trying to put down the medical profession in any way because they serve us on a regular basis, but there was nothing left to do for me with conventional medicine. And so I
Right.
spent 2 years slowly weaning myself off of every drug they had me on. And
Right.
some of them were easier to come off of than others. Uh,
Right.
Prednisone was the most difficult because my body was so used to having it there. So I would
Right.
one step forward, 2 steps back. I'd have to go back on it because I had a function. I needed to go to work. I needed
Right.
to take care of my children at this point as well. Um,
Right.
and I got myself off of every drug. And as I was getting well,
Mm-hmm.
I was realizing, oh, got rid of that drug. Oh, I feel a little clearer. My head doesn't hurt as much. Oh, I got off this drug. Oh, I'm able to go do this now. I mean, it was very apparent to me that the disease appeared worse with the medications that I was on. And
Wow.
I
That's
took
fast.
myself off of, sorry,
No
I took
problem.
myself off of every medication that I was on. And um, I'm well today. I mean, that's the biggest part of my healing process right there.
Yeah. So once you kind of drew that line in the sand, if you will, and you decided I am going to take a different route, you got the pain of being in the situation you were in became greater than the pain of not trying something else.
Absolutely. It was miraculous
Yeah.
how I mean, and I don't want it to sound like, oh, well, I just slowly took myself off each drug and then I felt amazing. It took a while.
Right.
It took more than just that.
Yes. And you mentioned that you went off it and then you had to go back on, and then you went off it and maybe you had to go back on. And I think that's so important for our listeners to hear that, because any journey of success is never linear.
Right.
It's never just, I'm drawing the line in the sand and I'm going up from here on out. That's not how it works.
No.
When we're working towards our goals, we are up here, we're down here, we're up here, we're down here. And then pretty soon our ups are becoming more frequent, and then it takes up from there.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happens. And then all of a sudden your days are, I'm getting to the gym more. I'm able to make dinner. And that was when I knew that I wasn't going to be sick for very long. I knew I was going to be well.
Right. You saw those advances and you just grabbed onto them.
Absolutely. But it does take a lot of, you have to believe, and you have to truly believe inside that you're going to get well, because those messages from your brain are so beyond powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that so much. Is there something that you could share with us about how you continued on that mindset once you made the decision? How did you not let the going back on prednisone, discourage you and give up? What was it that just kept pushing you forward? Was it something you saw? Were you plugging into something? Was it just your internal conversations? What was it?
I think it was my internal conversations and the consistent progress I saw. When you're seeing that consistent progress and where you were, that you're headed in the right direction, right?
Right.
The biggest, the power of intention and the power of your thoughts and the way that you live your life. I always joke around. My grandmother lived to a very into her 90s. And I always say a lot of it had to do with her perspective, because at 92 years old, she'd look at me and go, yeah, Lynda, next year, I'm going to get rid of this sofa and I'm putting all new carpeting over in this corner of my house. And then I'm going to do this. And I'd be sitting there thinking, does she not know? That's what she truly believed. And she lived really long, because in her mind, she was still doing stuff. She wasn't looking at her life like it was ending.
Right.
And that's the way I thought. And, if I could give you an example, one of the biggest examples for me is, when I knew that I was on that up road, I went to my doctor and I drafted a letter from him to Social Security Disability, which, by the way, Social Security at this point was paying me almost $3,000 a month for the rest of my life. Every time you have children, you get even more. And I knew that I didn't want that check anymore. And when I handed that letter to my doctor, he looked at me and said, "Are you out of your mind? You are a very sick woman, and this disease is never going to go away. Nobody asks to be taken off of Social Security Disability."
Right.
And I looked at him and said, "Well, here's something you need to understand. Because in order to get, by the way, Tammy, in order to get Social Security Disability, every month you have to fill out forms. And you have to prove that money they're giving you." And
right.
I looked at him and said, "What you don't understand is every other month I have to fill out forms. And you know what the message is in filling out those forms? I'm a sick woman. Look at me. Look how sick I am. My joints hurt. My pain is horrible." Even on days that it wasn't that bad, because you needed the money, right?
Right.
I might feel terrible tomorrow, so I better write it down. And
right.
You know what? I'm always going to be a sick woman if you keep giving me this money.
Right.
I got taken off. So, in fact, Social Security Disability contacted me and said, "Hey, we love what you're doing right now, but we're going to still keep paying you for another 6 months because we want to be sure that you're really well." And they continued to pay me, even though I was saying, "Don't give me the money." And I didn't have to fill out those forms anymore. And look at where I am today. I'm not sick anymore. And I think that was a huge piece.
Right.
Of recovery, was making that decision.
I agree. I think what we claim as our own is how we act out our life. Mm-hmm. So if you're claiming that, this is you are a sick woman, then that makes perfect sense to me that that's how it would show up in your body.
Yeah, every cell in your body responds to every single word you believe, every single bit of information I take in. I'm very picky with what I watch on TV or the messages I allow in, even still today. And I'm not sick anymore because now I know that it's going to affect the way you feel. It's going to affect your body.
Right. I am having just a little bit of freezing up on the video, so bear with me here if it's not linking up properly. So that's how you continued your mindset, was taking action towards getting the negative stuff out. It sounds like you don't allow yourself to go down that road. And I think that that's so important for our listeners to hear. We have neural pathways in our brains, and when we think one way over and over and over again, that pathway is like a path through a hiking trail. It's very clear, and your mind is able to go there very quickly. This is where my story goes. And so it's hard to break that pattern because that path is worn down and you know it and it's familiar. But when we stop choosing that path and try to cut a new path, that's when it's so effective in the brain, where the brain says, wait a minute, we're not going the old way. So self-discipline of stopping controlling your thoughts before they go there is so powerful.
It becomes our identity. When you continue to tell the same story over and over again and you don't want to change your I'm a true believer in whatever the event is, it already happened. It's done and gone. It's in the past. We get an opportunity in life to make up what we want to make up about that memory. Am I going to talk about, well, I was sick for all those years, so I have this disease and I'm always going to have it, or I was sick and that's in the past, but here's how I view it now. Right. And that's going to change, because a lot of us have self-fulfilling prophecies. We keep talking about the same story, and guess what? It materializes and it becomes truth. Right. I don't want that story. I want the story of being whole, having whole health and being well,
Right. And so that was the shift that you made in your mind, but you also made some shifts in your lifestyle, like physical lifestyle. So I want to talk about those now. And the first thing I want to talk about is, how did you change your diet? Mm-hmm. What did you do different in your diet? And how did you pinpoint that what you were doing wasn't helping with your symptoms and with your circumstances of that time?
Well, keep in mind, I was a young girl, right? I mean, the woman I am today would never be putting things into my body that I was. The time period I'm going to talk about now is my late 20s. Right. So I learned real quick that I needed to get rid of fast food. I processed food, a lot of sugar. It wasn't serving me, and everything I read pretty much talked about that, on not just with lupus, but with everything. Right. I was a big Diet Coke drinker when I was sick. What happens when you're sick is you want comfort, right? I was stuck sitting on a chair all day watching TV because I could barely move. I loved Diet Coke. I loved something that made me feel comfortable. So when that got removed from my life, aspartame, my gosh, it's evil, any kind of sugar substitute like that. You got to remember, I got well at a time where we didn't have the internet. I mean, I had a library. I didn't have a chat room to go to. I didn't have all these resources people have today, which sometimes can be good and sometimes can be bad, because people go on chat groups when something's bad in their life and they don't come back to tell you, hey, I came out the other side, and that's all you're hearing. And those messages can be, so I'm not completely unhappy with the fact that I didn't experience that. Right. But so at the time where I got well, lean proteins, I just learning that I needed to clean up that part of my diet, putting lots of whole grains in my diet, fruits and vegetables, good fats, the basics that we kind of know today, but back in the 90s, it wasn't as known as it is today. Right. But I think probably if I had to say the most important dietary change for me was eliminating dairy. completely from my life. And there's a small
Yeah.
paperback book that I encourage anybody, not just chronically ill, every human being should read. That's called Don't Drink the Milk. And if you
Okay.
Google that on Amazon, the book will come right up.
Right.
We're humans. We're the only animal that drinks another animal's milk. That milk is made to build large animals, not people, and it's an inflammatory. I mean,
Right.
it's so logical when you read this book that you'll never want to put dairy in your body again. I'm not going to lie. I have a little feta cheese, a little goat cheese. They're a little bit more. They work a little better with your body.
Yep.
Goat. But yeah, removing dairy was a huge. That was the one thing that I immediately saw a change in the way that I felt.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Fascinating. And how else do you get your nutrition? Were you reaching out to other like supplements or vitamins to bring in nutrition? And
Yeah.
how did you decipher what was working for you?
I just went by how I never I listened. I was very open-minded to people. And you have to be really careful because when you're sick, every guru and their grandmother's got a product for you to try. So you've got to be careful because you're kind of like a target as well.
Right.
But
right.
when I would hear something and it sounded a little logical, I would try it, give it a little bit of a time period. Some things I just knew weren't working. I tried a microbiotic diet. It was said that stay away from the shady foods, and that's supposed to help autoimmunity diseases like lupus.
Right.
I saw no change. I knew it wasn't working, so I just stopped it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I tried the supplements that worked mostly were fish oil. Definitely helped with inflammation once I introduced that. Probiotic is so important. That healthy tummy.
Yeah.
When you don't have a healthy tummy and you're taking supplements, they're not even being absorbed into your body and going where they're supposed to go.
Right.
Water intake. You're taking supplements and you're not drinking a substantial amount of water, it's not going to do what it needs to do. So it was a learning process over those years.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the biggies.
Yeah.
I would say fish oil and probiotic was super, super important for me.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that because I find that really interesting with probiotics because there's a lot of information about probiotics on the market today, especially kombucha is very popular. And there is a connection to the mind and gut. A lot of people think even that depression and anxiety and whatnot can be linked to your gut health. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. Did you have any tummy problems when you were... You never had any tummy problems?
Never had any issue. I have, and I thank God for that because my mom has had colitis, IBS her whole life. And she's a prime example of somebody that nothing seems to work for her because her stomach is so messed up that she doesn't absorb nutrients at all.
Right.
Never had that. But I am a firm believer with all the reading and research I've done over the years that I do believe that every illness does stem from the gut.
Right. And when we're eating tons of sugar or processed foods, that can really upset your gut biome.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to share something with you right now.
Okay.
I competed in a bodybuilding competition last week.
Yeah.
The guy I'm dating talked me into eating a Whopper.
Oh.
Yeah. And I had like half of a Whopper because we used to be my favorite sandwich. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to eat half of this Whopper just because it's going to bring back memories.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I was so sick the next day.
Oh, yeah.
And mostly, I felt depressed and had anxiety for the entire day. And I drank tons of water. I couldn't even believe I put that in my body.
Right.
But I figured once isn't going to kill me.
Yeah.
Who would ever think that the biggest symptom I felt that whole day was depression and anxiety? The whole day. So your body is not going to break that down properly. And if you're doing it all the time, I mean, that was the first time I had fast food in probably 10 years.
Yeah. And interesting. And it's so interesting to me that how we tie food to emotions and we think that this, because we did this in the past, this is going to bring us some feeling of goodness.
Right.
But in all reality, it makes us feel worse. And it's so fascinating that we'll continue to reward ourselves. Oh, I want to reward myself with this, or reward myself with this particular treat. But then it's kind of anticlimactic, because then after you have it, you just don't feel good. So I think if we focus on trying to give ourselves rewards that actually make us feel good, we can retrain the way we think about food.
Wow.
And that could be really powerful when you're making changes, for sure.
Yeah. Try to make your rewards not something that goes in your mouth.
Yeah.
With kids too, right? We want to reward kids with sugar. You know?
Right.
How crazy is that?
Yes. Yep.
Give them a new toy, something like
Yeah. So right along with your diet, I know that you told me in our other conversation that you've always, been into working out and whatnot. But how did you incorporate exercise into your recovery? How did that come into play for you?
I think that's a big part of my recovery, because, and even that journal that I found, I was finding in there that I was talking about it a lot. I identified from a very young age. I was in Jack LaLanne working out before they even had personal trainers. In my early 20s, all there was the girl at the desk that looked at your card. Like, that's how new working out was. And I loved it. And I loved the way it made me feel. Like I said, I was an aerobics instructor at a very young age. Right. I just loved exercise. And I have to tell you, even when I was my sickest, I just had the mentality of, I'm going to feel horrible if I sit here on this chair, and I'm going to feel horrible when I get on that treadmill. I'm going to just get on there because my blood's going to flow. Yeah, I'm going to be, my cells in my body are going to be moving. But I would literally go to the gym and get on the treadmill and imagine feeling like you have a hangover, feeling like you have the flu. It was my normal. It was my life. It was my new normal of, it got to a point that I didn't look at it any day as any different than another day, because it was just all I knew.
Right.
But on that treadmill, I was such a trooper. I look back now and go, my gosh. Sometimes today I complain, I don't want to get on the treadmill.
Right.
You did it then. If you
right.
did it then, nothing's impossible. But exercise was a huge part for me. So eating well, I knew that when I ate well, I had more energy to get to the gym. So because when I was in the gym, I felt like the old Lynda. I felt like the Lynda that wasn't sick. I think when I looked good, because, the drugs they had me on, you blow up like a balloon. I felt horrible when I'm overweight. And so it was my encourager. Working out was my catalyst, my encourager through this whole process.
Right. So
I became a personal trainer.
Yeah. So your old habits that you were used to, you incorporated them back into your daily life to just feel normal, right?
Yeah. To just identify with the old Lynda. You're so sick. You feel like, who am I? Who am I? I know that I'm in here somewhere, right?
Right.
So working out brought me right back to who I knew. Healthy. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. So I want to back up just a little bit before you got healthy. You definitely saw a lot of doctors, right? You had a lot of doctor's appointments. I want to talk a little bit about how you handled that. What was that like, going into the doctor's office all the time, and how was the course of treatment affecting you, and what were your feelings around that? All your doctor's appointments.
Yeah. And it's horrible what somebody sick has to go through. Nobody really knows, unless somebody, I'm sure there's plenty of people listening right now, that when you're chronically ill, and a lot of chronic illnesses involve fatigue, involve being tired, involve brain fog, and you find yourself having to spend a whole day going from one doctor to, because that's what I would do. I'd go to that same hospital. They were all in the same place, all the doctors, and just see one after another. Sometimes the most infuriating part is, my appointment was at 10 and he's busy and he can't see me till 11, and so now all your frustration is building up. And, for me, my doctor labeled me. I remember one doctor I had charged me more. And I said, why all of a sudden is my one appointment gone up like $50? And he said, because you're a difficult patient. You don't you don't just take what I tell you and receive it and do what I tell you to do. You're going to negotiate with me like I was bartering, at a flea market.
Right.
Like, Lynda, you need to start. One of the examples I can give you is they wanted me to start taking a drug called Imuran at one point, and it's an immunosuppressant. And I looked it up. It could cause infertility. It can cause all kinds of problems. And I didn't have children yet. And I said, no, you've got to give me another option because that can cause infertility. And so I would find another avenue and suggest it to him.
Right.
Sometimes he'd say no. And sometimes I'd do it. Sometimes I wouldn't do it. It depends on, there were so many situations like that. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I remember at one point I was hospitalized. I was on so many different drugs and I developed a blood clot. And so,
my gosh,
as doctors, they only operate a certain way. There's a blood clot. So we have to put you on blood thinners. And I remember seeing the nurse write blood thinners for the rest of her life on my file. And I thought,
oh my gosh.
And so I did my research when I got home. Blood thinners, you can't have vitamin K, which is vegetable. What I mean is you can't increase or decrease how much greens you have on blood thinners. I'm thinking something's not right with this if I have to moderate what I put in my body that's green, at any level. If I feel like I need more greens, I want to be able to eat them. And so my whole point here is I did some research. I went and saw a hematologist, and I learned that an adult baby aspirin can thin your blood. Now it's not going to thin it the blood thinner does. And I made that decision, and the hematologist said, sure, you could do that. It's not going to thin it as much as it needs to be for somebody that's had a quote unquote blood clot, and you could end up dying. And those were the times in my recovery that I made decisions and said, maybe I will be wrong, but I'm willing to take this risk right now and take this adult baby aspirin instead of that drug, because when I look at that drug, the positives don't outweigh the negatives. And I'm going to, and I just felt like spiritually, and that this is the path I need to take. Thank God I did that one. I'd be on blood thinners today. I don't even take the adult baby aspirin anymore. So, I'm so glad, because you hear stories of people that die of chronic illnesses. They'll say that it was lupus. It wasn't lupus. It was this stupid blood thinner that caused a million problems afterwards. So you've got to be your own doctor. You've got to advocate for yourself.
Right. And that's so important. And it should be more of a relationship with your doctor, that you guys work together, because intuitively, I feel like we know when something's not right. And that's what you just explained in your story, that you just intuitively knew that this wasn't a drug for you, that you could maybe solve this in another way.
And here's what's different today. For anybody that's listening today, you have more power today. Because remember, when I was getting well for a good part of it, like I said, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have chat rooms. Doctors are a little bit different today, because they were used to, at the time that I was there, I looked at him like he was God. Where was I going? I could go to a library, but a book is a little different than the internet. A book is a little different than a website or a chat room where I'm getting real information right now. And so doctors today are used to people questioning them. So they have a different attitude, where back then it was like, well, that's because that's what I said. And you're going to have to do what I say. So you have a lot more today to work with. You should have a lot more confidence being sick today to be able to question. I don't think that that's a good option for me, because here's why. Don't be afraid to ever do that. You owe that to yourself.
Absolutely. You do. And advocating for yourself is, I think, just such an important part of getting well, because you do have the resources to do research. And if someone's not willing to work with you to get to your optimum health, you need to find another doctor.
Absolutely. And I did have those doctors. And that's what I did every time I'd go find a new one.
Yeah.
You're not going to listen to me. This is my body. You know, and I do make the ultimate choice in the end. It could kill me, but it's my body, and I will make that choice.
Right. Right. And that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely hope that people will take that to heart, because this should be a relationship, and, changing the marketplace of medicine is something that I feel really strongly about. I hope that people, when they advocate for themselves and they bring up new ideas, that the marketplace will change for us as patients. They will have more options for us and less options that are harmful for us. If all you're selling is cookies, then it's hard. It's hard to make a good choice when all they're selling is cookies. But if we don't buy the cookies and they are forced to bring in other options, then we'll get the kind of care that we need. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think, I think doctors know this on some level too, at least mine did. I remember going back to my doctor so it was 5 years ago, 5 years of not being on any medication for lupus and not having a single symptom. And I went back because I wanted him to retest me. I wanted all those markers to be tested again. Does it still show that I have lupus? And all of them came back negative. The only thing they have of anything related to lupus is Raynaud's in my fingers, which is something that can happen to women just over a certain age anyway. I have nothing else. And when I looked at him and said, "What do you think happened?"
Yeah. What did he say?
And he said, "You know what I think it was? Because you wouldn't listen to a darn thing that I told you. You fought me tooth and nail. And Lynda, I don't know what it was, but you fought and you figured it out, and you don't have this thing anymore." Now, I don't think he would, if we contacted him right now, I don't think he'd admit that he said that to me. But behind closed doors, just he and I, he knew. And this is a medical doctor. He knew that my fight and my determination to not be sick anymore is the reason why I'm not sick today. I can't tell you the specifics of, okay, do A, B, and C, and you're going to be well, but it's that fight in you that's going to make you well. It's that fight.
Yes. And such a big key part of your fight, from what I can see, was the words that you used. So tell me a little bit about that, and the language, how you changed your language around your disease or the disease.
Yeah.
How did you change that, and how powerful was that?
It's probably, I could talk about the nutrition. I could talk about working out. I could talk about, not accepting diagnosis from doctors. But the most powerful part of my recovery is the mind. Okay. What I talked about with my grandmother, it's the same thing, right? The power of your mind and how you're viewing. I very early in my recovery realized that I could no longer use terms like my lupus, my arthritis, my kidney disease, and I think I started noticing over time that the people that were still sick were always going, so my MS and my diabetes, because we start to identify with it. It's not yours. And I don't care how long you've been experiencing it. I don't care if you were born, if you've been told you were born with it. It is not yours. You don't own it. It's visiting right now, and there's a lesson for you to learn, but it's not yours. Louise Hay put out a book many years ago called "You Can Heal Your Life."
Yes, she did.
Well, Tammy, I got to tell you, the first time I read that book, I was so angry because she insinuates in that book that on an unconscious level, we've chosen this disease, that it's serving us on some level. And I used to just think, how dare you insinuate that I want this right now? You know what? She couldn't be any closer to the truth with that book. That it serves us on some level. And I know it's so hard for anybody sick to hear that right now, that, are you kidding me that I'm choosing this? Yeah. Do the work. Read that book. You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and be open-minded when you read it. Yeah. And you will see that is true. That the thoughts that we have, and the ownership we take of that disease, it's not yours. You don't own it. It's not yours. Yes. It's going to be gone. It's going to eventually be gone,
Yes, that's so powerful. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
I want to give you a chance to speak to all the listeners that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you a chance to speak to the listeners directly, Lynda.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think about what you want them to take away from this discussion that we had here today. Because there's people out there listening, and maybe they are in bed most of the day. Maybe, everything hurts. Maybe they just don't see a way out. So what is it that you could tell them that would bring a breakthrough about?
If there's a couple of things, there's anything I've learned that I operate differently in my life today, is that
Yeah.
when you want something, okay, nothing is impossible to me anymore. I mean, some situations in life, we have to be realistic and practical about, and we might say, yeah, that might be a little harder to obtain. But I got to say that I truly operate from a place today of, if you want it, if you want to be well, and it's at the deepest part of your soul and your core. I'm not going to say that it's completely gone. You want to be better than you are today. Absolutely, you can be more well. You could be healthier. There is nothing that's impossible to me anymore. I guess that's the only words I'm really trying to say there.
Right.
Because I never ever imagined that I would be who I am today. I go back and read that journal today. I was in my 20s, and I was such a sick woman I could barely move. I'm 55 years old, and I went rock climbing on Sunday. I mean,
Yeah.
I was climbing up a wall in a gym on Saturday. I was mountain biking on Sunday. I mean, I never in a million years thought I'd be where I am today. So no, nothing's impossible. And number two that I would say is, my journey was exactly that, my journey.
Yes.
If you go and try to, or contact me after this and say, I want you to tell me every single thing you did and how it worked, I can do that. And it doesn't mean you won't take a tidbit away, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. What worked for me may not necessarily work for you. Even if you have specifically lupus, it might not work for you. My body's different than your body.
Right.
Your genetics are a different makeup than mine. But
right.
Here's the important part. Scott Peck wrote a book. Is it The Road Less Traveled? Where he talks about, I think it's that book. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. Right. And don't get me wrong, this destination was pretty important to me to be well. I'm glad I'm here.
Yes.
But
yes,
it's that journey. And I have to say that in the end, looking at lupus as a gift, it made me who I am today. And that journey and that story, it. If you have a chronic illness, get excited about it right now, right? Get excited that I have an opportunity now to go out there and learn so much about myself that somebody that's healthy will never have that opportunity to learn. I'm going to go through a journey right now that if you're well and you never had to deal with adversity, you never get this opportunity, because I've grown as a woman in ways that I never would have grown had I not been. So find your story and go. You've got a story to tell. You've got a journey to go conquer right now. Do it.
Yeah, that's so true. And one of my mentors said the other day that everybody has a story that will bring you to your knees. And I think that is absolutely true. We walk by each other in stores and through our day, and we don't think about that every single person has a story that will bring you to your knees. And yours definitely is one of those.
Oh, thank you. And if I can encourage one person through my journey, one person that I can inspire and motivate to get on the road to look at this as a positive opportunity. I know it stinks that you're sick, but I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna run with it.
Absolutely. And journal it. What a gift you have found today of your.
Yes,
I love it. Yeah. So that would be a great thing, I think, for someone to do who is chronically ill right now. Absolutely. Is just to start a journal, because this is the beginning of your story that you're going to document. The day that you decided you were going to make a slight shift. Absolutely. And start doing something different towards your optimum health. Well, I couldn't be more grateful to have you here, Lynda. This has been so incredible. And do you have a website that we could say that our listeners can go to so they can learn more about you? Would you like to give me that website?
It's ontrack, ONTRCK.fitness. Very simple. ontrack.fitness.
ontrack.fitness. Perfect. And you're going to be featured on our Facebook page too. I have some incredible photos of Lynda. I was absolutely blown away by these photos. And I know everybody's probably dying to see them after they hear your story. So they're going to be up on the Naturally Inspired Facebook page, and also on naturallyinspiredpodcast.com, so that you can see her transformation and you can get to know more about Lynda. So again, Lynda, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to hearing your story again and again and again, because I know that you're going to be changing lives for many years to come. Thank you. If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.